Michael.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on our webinar today. It's interesting. Over the last 8 weeks, we've all been trying to determine what is our new normal and how do we as business leaders, what can we do to impact our businesses? And I think as our team started evaluating it and speaking to all our clients, we started to recognize that there were some strategies and structures that were needed to help move people forward. And thus we created our Start Now webinar series. And it's going to have three-part series. You can choose to go to all three, go to each one based on what may be relevant. And we're going to talk about what it's actually going to take to start moving things forward. In addition, I have Erin Hoffman on the webinar here today. Erin is one of our senior consultants. She's on her 8th year with us, or entering her 8th year. She's 7.5 years, I guess, with us. And Erin is one of our senior consultants who's also going to help facilitate this. None of us can predict what's going to be happening in the future. And we do know, though, it's going to be a different journey than any of us have been on. And I'm going to encourage you that as we go through this, we're going to do some polling throughout the various sections. I'm going to be walking you through a workbook as we discuss it that we're then going to send to all of you that you're going to spend on your working on your business time. Because I know all of you are spending that working on your business time very judiciously right now. And so we're actually wanting to make it active so that not only can you get some knowledge, but give you some to-dos to start helping you begin to put a strategy in place that may need to be adjusted as we go along here. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to pop up my workbook here. Let me try that one more time. You think I'd have this down by now, right? Only done this like 50 times. All right. Does everyone see my screen there?
Yes, we can see it, Michael.
Okay. So the Start Now webinar series is kind of interesting. We did a lot of research over the last couple months, and we were really trying to look at what are the things that people need to do in a crisis. And there's actually 3 different stages. One is stabilize. So I know all of us have been running around trying to figure out PPP. We're trying to figure out the idle loan program. We're trying to figure out what's going on with our customers. We're trying to figure out how to work remotely. We're trying to figure out, are we essential or not essential? We're trying to learn all these new norms right now and trying to figure out how do we operate and what does the future look like for us to operate. So we started to look at 3 different stages, and the first one is to stabilize. And as this dust is beginning to settle with some of this initial aspects, I think it's a time for us to really stabilize our businesses. And then we're going to talk about some ideas and strategies to do that. Some of you may already be at that stage. Some of you may just be getting that stage based on where you are in the business cycle. The other stage is recover. So now that we've kind of stabilized, think of it like building a house. We got to get our foundation. Our foundation maybe has a lot of cracks in it right now, but now what we need to do is kind of stabilize it, and we know we have a strong foundation. We can then start talking about recover. And the recover series is going to be next Wednesday. That's our next webinar series. Is now that I've stabilized, what do I need to do to start recovering? And then the third element is then how do I get back to thriving? And the reality, folks, where we are today in this economic climate that none of us have ever lived through, and all the predictions all over the board, is that we may end up trying to get to thrive. We may have to go back to stabilize or go back to recover steps just based on things going on. The one thing that we all know true right now is that we have to be agile in our approach to how we're moving forward with our businesses. So as we were looking at these 3 areas, we started to realize there are specific things business owners need to do in what we call our scalable growth model. And I'm going to have Aaron talk a little bit about the scalable growth model. And then in a second, and then what we're going to do is start looking at some of the aspects and solutions to you, or things you should be assessing right now in your business. The one thing I think is important right now in your business, and I'm sure you're all doing this at some level, I encourage you to get all the things out of your head and your team's head of all their fears and what they think the impacts are. So what are the internal impacts? You probably already have some of these. You may not have employees working right now. What are the external impacts? Have your customers gone away? Have you struggled looking at what the new marketplace is going to be like? Gosh, I can't deliver my product and service anymore like I thought I could. The marketing opportunities we used to do, like trade shows or conferences, aren't available to us anymore. And so the first thing we think you need to do is get all those things out of your head. Get all the internal impacts, all the external impacts. One thing that's happening, as we know, we live in this 24/7 news cycle, is that every day we're hearing new things, right? We're opening up the government, but then the virus is growing, or hey, stock market's doing great, which is not an indicator of the economy. I just want to say that. But oh, consumer confidence is down. And so there's all these things going on. And I encourage you as business owners to take the time to really think about, so based on all this stuff going on, what are the what ifs? What are the worst case scenarios? What are the opportunities that may exist based on what's happening right now? So the first thing is to really look at what are all your what ifs of what is going on. And I don't know, if some of you, are there certain what ifs that you're concerned about? Feel free to ask any questions or put anything in the comment section. Are there some what ifs that you're concerned about? That what if our economy continues to go down? And it's bound to, right? I mean, Europe just announced today that they're going to be at least a 7.4 negative GDP this quarter minimally, and that's the Great Recession. They're at 4.9 negative. And they're a little ahead of us of the lockdown cycle. So there are some impacts. And so I encourage you, in your working on your business time, which I know you all are going to do, I encourage you to take time, first of all, and get all the fears, get all the things out of your head so that you can start focusing on what you need to do to move things forward. Okay? The next thing is,
Michael, before you jump in, I'd love to hear from some of our participants. We have quite a few people on board of what their biggest concern is. Maybe we can just do a quick poll on what their biggest concern right now that they're facing.
Thanks, Aaron.
I don't know if there's an all of the above option. I know a lot of our clients have probably.
So as you get that poll in place, what we could do is start talking about maybe the scalable growth model and how to assess your business. When you think right now, it's about how do I assess my business and what are the areas I should be looking at my business. There may be some things you already know you need to look at, right? Financials, your staff, services, but how deep are you really looking at the business? So Aaron, do you want to go ahead and just.
Absolutely. If you want to bring that image to the center of the screen. So this is we'll bring up those poll results in a moment, but I want to show one way that we at Collaboration think about and analyze every business that we work with. And we look at 3 specific areas, and we call it the scalable growth model. And we know that if you're not focusing as a business owner on all 3 of these areas, that you can't scalably grow. And as with COVID and with all of the economic changes, we've really continue to rely on this as a model to say, okay, now that we're in stabilize, what do we need to look at for each of our business? So the infrastructure, this is the finances, the budget, the looking at the processes, delivery models, the people's roles, all of those have been impacted. Growth, this is our sales and marketing. This is bringing customers in and keeping those customer relationships. A lot of marketing strategy has changed significantly. How we market and sell to our customers, and for a lot of us, sales has slowed down or completely stopped. And then the last area of the scalable growth model we look at is leadership, and that's you, and your management team if you have one. How are you responding as a leader? What's the culture, the communication? How are you leading the charge and bringing your people on board as you navigate through these changes? So what we'll be doing is looking through that lens of each of those three areas as we go through of what you should be doing in the stabilized portion of your business for infrastructure growth and collaborative leadership.
Thank you, Erin. And as we look at this, we think there are probably three things that you need to be looking at. Many of us probably already know what's not working, right? Right now, and it was whether workflows that used to work, whether it's client challenges that you used to be able to solve, but now that your clients maybe have a different set of challenges. But as you look at each of those areas, it's what is still working in each one of those areas that we can use as a strength or that can remain stable. And we could be looking at everything that's not working, but also I think it's important to look at our strengths of what is working, because not everything's falling apart, but there's certain elements that we need to focus on. Then what area has changed in each one of those scalable growth model areas? And is it a permanent change, or do you think it's a temporary change? So some things like working from home, although it's a temporary change, it may be a longer temporary change for some organizations, and some organizations may decide that part of their population could work from home as a permanent solution. So go through, as you're going through the what ifs in your own business and going through the scalable growth model, is start asking these questions. And the next one is the new normal. Right now, and I put the new normal, comma, the right now. The reason I say that, because I don't think any of us are going to know what the new normal is for a while. We've all seen just in the last 8 weeks of shelter in place that the new normal was changing every hour or every day. And now we have to be looking at how is the new normal going to look for us right now this month or the next 90 days, and having to be agile. So even being able to look at your areas of your business, methodical growth, your infrastructure, your leadership, what is our new normal right now based on what we still know works, what we know isn't working that we got to change, and what if, with all this what if scenarios. From that, being able to define your new normal. So what we thought we would do, Erin and I are going to go through methodical growth, and what I'm going to do is kind of go over to Erin and have her start talking about some of the things you should be looking at right now within this new normal. Or abnormal, as some people, I know I've said that in a couple webinars that people have grabbed onto. But what are, Erin, as we're looking at the stabilized phase, what are the things we should be looking at right now?
I think, and right before I jump in, I just want to get an idea from our poll of what is the biggest concern for some of the folks. So that's coming up right now. That really helps us understand and focus. And it looks like overwhelmingly cash flow is a big one, and that's definitely a huge concern. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the areas to be looking at. So a few things as we're looking, starting with methodical growth of getting business in. What do we need to do to start to evaluate? And a couple things that the first thing in Stabilize, if you haven't already done this, and a lot of you have, is taking a moment to reach out to your clients, see what they are experiencing right now. Where are they at? A lot of our customers that we've been working with, figuring out how impacted they are. This may affect payment terms, what they need right now, additional needs that they may need from you. So I think definitely reaching out, having those one-on-one conversations is really valuable. And you have other people on your sales team, having them reach out as well.
Erin, one thing that I've seen some clients do as well, they've started to go back to even clients that they haven't talked to in a couple of years that maybe aren't doing business with them right now, but used to, just to almost re-engage and find out what's going on, because there might be some new needs going on out there, or they may have a need for a new supplier or a new business to provide a certain product or service, because we don't know what their supply chain has done during this time as well. So
yeah, I think that that can be huge, and it's a great way to, if you've got a few extra minutes and filling out, what to do, it's a great opportunity to just do that reach out. I think looking at what goods and services you can deliver, I've been so impressed with the ingenuity and what different people have been doing in terms of reach out and figuring out how can I retool, how can I deliver my products and services. Restaurants are a great example of this. I had a winery deliver wine right to my doorstep. So I think continuing to be creative, it may be another great opportunity when you're talking to customers for how else might we deliver our products and services, whether it's virtually or door to door.
And thinking about that too, maybe some short-term solutions that may turn into long-term solutions as well, as we may have to anticipate over the next 6, 12, 18 months that customers may get used to certain of these service changes or product changes that you may need to also be thinking about in your stabilization, again, that temporary or permanent. And permanent, again, could be for the next 90 days or the next 6 months based on whatever the new normal is going to look like.
Yeah, I think that what you said, Michael, about looking at the next 30 to 90 days is so important, because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy trying to think of the next year. And I think if you can just come up with a plan, let the team know that it's flexible, that this is what we're going to do for the next 30 days, that can be really helpful to just get focused.
Yeah, and you think about cash flow. Cash flow is impacted, right, by two things. It's going to be impacted by getting new clients in, getting current clients to pay, generating new business. And the second one is our expense management. So in this area of methodical growth, it's really about having to revive your sales engine. I've had many clients feel like they're having to restart their business almost. And maybe they were doing really well, but they got maybe a little lazy on the sales and marketing aspects of their business. So they maybe hadn't had to be as aggressive or even proactive in trying to get business in. And so on methodical growth, it's really like maybe your sales process isn't working anymore. Maybe there's something that you have to be doing differently as well in this area. We have a question here. Do you feel price pressure is coming back? So that's an interesting question. Price pressure, I assuming meaning having to lower prices. You think of the Great Recession that we just went through, pre-Great Recession, people didn't have to do sales, restaurants didn't have to do happy hours. Post-recession, everybody got used to happy hours. They're waiting for retailers to do sales, et cetera, because they didn't want to pay full price. And I think it's definitely going to be coming back. And there's even some talk about possibly deflation, which means that prices are going lower than they actually can be supported. And so one thing to think about for your business with pricing is you just may need to think of different pricing terms. You might need to think of different, maybe you offered your pricing, you have to pay up, different terms, how they pay. For some of you, you may want to collect your money up front if you're unsure that your clients are going to be stable and around in 90 days. But the price pressure is definitely going to come back. I think people are going to expect it, actually, because they're going to think businesses need the work. And then, sorry to interrupt, Aaron, I just wanted to throw in that question.
Oh, great.
What are some other things in that methodical growth area, do you think?
I think the other thing is, going back to something you said, is that marketing and communication plan and reassessing. Usually we would advise our businesses to have a 12-month marketing plan, but right now it's what is your marketing plan for the next 30 days? And obviously we're having to rely a lot more on video, web, social media. I think has been a huge marketing opportunity, but really strategizing on how you can get your message out, how you can talk to your customers, let people know that you're there and what services you are offering right now.
Yeah, the other thing it's interesting with the methodical growth, for many of you, you may also have to rethink about who your ideal client profile is today. because your ideal client profile may change, and really understanding not only the demographics of your clients, the psychographics, what are their buying behaviors going to be now? Are people, even like if you're a winery, are people really going to want to go back to tasting rooms with someone pouring wine? Are, you know, all these businesses are having to really rethink who are their clients. And I think this is the time to determine who is your ideal client profile. It's the time to revise that as well.
Yeah. I would say, especially on industry segments, I know for a lot of businesses, some industry segments that they serve are severely impacted and have stopped or reduced significantly their buying, and other segments are not maybe essential. So what do you need to shift in your message depending on if you serve different segments?
Well, you know, the next area, so you all get that methodical growth, it's sales and marketing, what's working, what's not working, what's going to be a permanent change, what's going to be a temporary change. And then on top of that, really looking at how do you change your sales process and your marketing process now, because it's going to be a requirement to do that, I think. I'm doing a CEO roundtable, virtual roundtable up in the Bay Area for all these businesses. And I can tell you what we're working on mostly is redefining who they have to go after and find how they need to now reach those people differently. And they're really, again, it's almost like a startup, having to rethink at the beginning. For a lot of business owners too, they feel like, gosh, I've been building my business. Now I feel like I'm back to where I was 8 years ago, 5 years ago. And rightly so, the economy is going to be shifting us that way. The next thing is really intentional infrastructures. And, you know, intentional infrastructures is, I think, the thing that so many people probably don't put tons of energy in, but really assessing your business right now. What are the systems and processes that are working and not working? How can you get technology involved in really looking at economies of scale? You know, intentional infrastructure, Aaron, too, is finance.
Yeah.
You know, what are some of your thoughts in that area?
This is the biggest one. And, you know, one of the things, this is also probably the hardest one. And one of the things I've been advising my clients is take a worst case scenario, look at your budget. You know, let's hope for the best and let's work towards, you know, a best case. But when it comes to budgeting, you really have to analyze and look at what is the worst case scenario and start at least knowing what decisions you need to make accordingly. And those are never easy decisions. Those are expense decisions and people decisions. But I think that's number one in the stabilization is taking a real hard look at the budget.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. I think it's those tough decisions that people have to make. People, office space, other expenses, and I think people almost have to go through a grieving process of, you know, they're in denial, they're they're going through the anger, why did this happen? You know, they can go through the whole grieving process, but part of it has to get to acceptance. And I can't implore enough, folks, that our financial situation is unprecedented for any of us, and including the people trying to figure it out. But we do know it's going to be a rocky road, which is my favorite ice cream, by the way. But it is going to be a rocky road over the next year and a half. And it is about stabilizing. And on the financial side, it is about making those tough choices. Of course, there's, you know, the PPP loan, the EIDL loan, those are all going to kind of go away. I don't know if there's going to be another stimulus package. They're already talking about the concern about the deficit because everyone needs money right now. The infrastructure does, the cities, the states. And so I think part of it is on the intentional infrastructures is making sure you're managing those areas well. And looking at all your systems, processes, workflow. What's working, what's not working, what are permanent changes? And an interesting change, Aaron, I don't know if you've seen this as well, is I've had a lot of clients asking about what do we need to prepare for employees or customers to come back to our offices?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I was, you know, just ironically putting this plan together for our business, and it's, you know, it varies depending on industry, but I think really looking at how do we operate with all the social distancing guidelines in place. for employees, but also customer safety when they're coming in. So what I would recommend as we inch closer to reopening for some of the non-essential businesses, and that opening will be staggered and restricted in some ways. But what does that look like? How do we ensure employee safety? How do we, what kind of policies do we put in place now? So I would encourage you to start thinking that through, and how you're going to set up your office or your building or your warehouse accordingly.
And again, what's working, what's not working, is it permanent, temporary, and then what does our new normal look like right now? Right?
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick poll on staffing and things that you may have had to do with your staffing. Should see that pop up. And so I know we realize some people are essential businesses, some people are non-essential businesses. So go ahead and fill out the quick little poll. The last area here is about leadership. And, leadership at this time is really interesting because it's going to require leaders. I know I've talked a lot about this, but, it's about how is my attitude, how is our culture, how is my team and my team of leaders, if you have leaders, helping to really and keep our employees engaged. But at the same time, as leaders, I hear a lot of anxiety about the future. And their anxiety about the future is this ambiguity right now. In this, where everyone wants to know what the new normal is. Everyone wants to know when we're going to open up as a state. Everyone wants to know when their business is going to be able to open up. But it's almost, as leaders right now, you have to own that anxiety and be able to put it down. Put all your anxiety on that what if page we talked about earlier. And collaborative leadership is really about crisis of learning how to at least put a 90-day vision out right now, or maybe it's a 60-day plan versus a year or 3-year plan right now, because it's going to be adjusted. I also think that in this area, it's going to be interesting under leadership of what are the things that you need to keep looking at. In fact, we have a question here that says, what trend should I be looking at in the economy? The stock market seems to be doing okay. It's an interesting question, isn't it, Erin?
Yeah.
Because the stock market, I've talked to numerous financial planners, and they keep saying the stock market is not indicative of the economy. It's about investor risk. And so right now, I encourage you to look at your industry trends. Your industry is probably putting some things out. There are some trends. We can send you a list that we look at from a New York Times article last year. Look at the top trends to look at a downturn in the economy. Everything from unemployment, the PMI, Purchasing Manufacturers Index, Treasury yield. There's a bunch of different things you can look at. Right now, they're all negative. They're all going in the wrong direction. What we don't know is when that's going to bounce back. But as a leader, you should be able to spend time each week really looking at those trends and then setting back and saying, what do I now need to do with this information? One thing I might recommend is to create a folder of articles about coming back, and everything you get during the week, just throw that in that one folder and then come back and look at it. Erin, what are some things under collaborative leadership that you think we should also look at?
That's a great question. I have an analogy of what I've been talking with my clients about, of how to behave, but I want to see on the staffing kind of what's the result of that, what people have had to do. So it looks like 43% same staffing levels, which is great, and then a mix between the other ones, the other options. So thank you. That gives us a good idea. These are always the hardest decisions with your people. I would say the analogy I've been giving our clients is, when it comes to leadership, you almost have to be that general in the field, and imagine that general that is brutally honest, transparent. Hey, this is going to be hard. This is what we're facing. This is the risks that we may have, but this is the plan moving forward. And it's not a 5-year plan. It's this is what we're going to do in this charge, this next 30 days or this week. And people need that. People need that type of leader in a crisis. And they don't sugarcoat it, don't hide from it, because, and definitely don't hesitate from communicating because you don't know. That's one of the other challenges is I don't have all the answers, so I don't know what to communicate to my team. And that really just leaves a gap in leadership. So I think if you can just embody that generally, even if you're not feeling it, and that's what your people need right now. That's what they're looking to you for.
Yeah, you know, I think that honesty and transparency is probably the most critical aspect. You know, and you may have anxiety, think of how your team may be responding. And even if your team is fully staffed right now, like the 43% of the folks, they're probably thinking and worried about the future as well. Even if you guys have, there's a lot of clients that are essential, that have a lot of business, but they see things going on around them with their families and friends, and it's just going to bring some anxiety. So I think being transparent, saying, look, this is what we know now, and we're preparing now for the future as well. There's a question here as well from Vivian. So do you believe that values are going to be dropping, real estate values, I assume, dropping due to the COVID? Many developments coming online, people losing their jobs, not sure how to cover mortgages. I wish I had a crystal ball for this one, Vivian. I'm sure you do too. I do think if you look economically, most of us experienced the last recession. The last recession was started by housing, and that's never happened. So it was a very unique recession for us. It was a housing crisis. Usually housing follows an economic crisis. Now, we have not had a pandemic in our lifetime. And but we do know mortgage forbearances are growing, almost doubling every 2 weeks. And that's where people can defer their mortgages. And so with that, there's right now, if you don't have a government-backed loan, it has to be paid back by a certain amount of time. There is anticipation that you're going to see defaulting of mortgages coming. Unemployment, I just saw a stat this morning that their numbers are coming out this week, and you know it's going to be in the 20s, but they're expecting now sometime in May, June, we're going to possibly get 25 to 30% as this continues. And that you can't have 20 or 30% of the population not working, even with unemployment, and expect people are going to still comfortable buying. The last thing is mortgages. Rates keep going up and down. It is getting very hard to get mortgage loans right now. It's going to get harder just because the banks are going to about risk. So all of that said, I think values are probably going, my hunches, are you're going to start seeing some values coming down for people wanting to get out of properties. Again, I can't predict it. May have people who are ready to buy too, so that'll keep prices stabilized. But I just read something, they're anticipating about a 3 to 4% drop in real estate values. That was on Monday I was reading, so that could be a possibility. You know, at the end of the day, folks, I'm going to share my screen again, and it's about you as leadership, and I want to be able to share with you about becoming what we call a critical thinker. And the workbook we're going to send to you folks, you can rate yourself on being a critical thinker. But there's actually aspects that you need to do in crisis. And leading up to what Aaron's saying about being transparent. Part of it is practice balanced thinking. You know, sometimes we have biases. So we might have biases that we think, oh, we can work ourselves out of this, or this is overblown, or you got to get past some of your own mental biases, whether it's on the negative or positive side. And so part of critical thinking right now is making sure you're having balanced thinking. The other thing is to exercise mental and emotional moderation. And I don't know about you, but it has been, some days I'm doing great, other days there's a lot of emotion tied in. So as this issue is going on and how to stabilize your business, make sure you're not letting overthinking it without the emotion and how it's going to impact your clients, yourself, or don't get overly emotional with it and rate yourself on that. Practice situational awareness, and I think this is probably one of the most critical things right now with critical thinking as leaders. Think about this. We're in crisis mode. And in crisis mode, every time there's a new situation comes up, we have to be able to deal with it. And that's the agility that we've been talking about. We need to be agile at this time. The other component is exercise promote discipline, effective thinking. You know, part of this sounds easy because we all want to believe we're disciplined and effective thinkers, but really getting your team together and say, let's spend 10 minutes on this, let's solve this. We have 65% of the information, then let's move forward. And not spending days on trying to make some of the tougher decisions in your business. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is really about being empathetic to your client issues, your employee issues, understanding all the challenges that are going for them at home right now. And also focus on destinations, not dramas. You know, don't get all caught up in all the drama and all the news feeds, but what's the destination? What is that 30 or 60 day or 90-day destination trying to get your team? So when you're looking at solving your issues and assessing what's going on, also come in with some critical thinking as well. I'm going to stop sharing because we have some more questions coming in.
Michael, so Jill had a question about a service, looking at the service industry when large gatherings, corporate meeting events, travel, vehicles, everything that when you're looking at that, probably one of the last industries to come back from this. The question is, are there options to hibernate and come back next spring if the landscape is better? Since we're looking at a second wave in the winter as well.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. Hibernation is might be for some businesses what it might look like, Jill. You know, I think you're correct. I think the group gatherings, you know, the first in our county, I know we have people from all over the state on the call, but in our county, it's 10 people or more, I think, is in phase, or less is in phase 1. And that's supposed to go for 30 days. Then it goes to phase 2, depending on the numbers. But there are expecting opens and closes to happen throughout the next season, right? I think hibernation might be something. If you have costs that you're having to continue to pay, but you don't have the revenue, how long can you sustain that? And it might make sense for some businesses that have to almost go on pause and then kind of come back and rebuild. It might be interesting too, that there might, if you have groups of 10, there might be able to have some opportunity to do some other things creatively with small families, group of friends. It's assuming too that the wineries are going to be open and hospitality places are going to be open that you can go to. So that's where the agility of keeping your eye on it is going to be really critical.
Yeah, and I can just jump in there too, Michael, from my experience working with some clients that are in the event industry or large event, weddings. That is essentially what they've had to do, is really let go of staff, go to minimal base operation, in some cases just the owner. And they're utilizing that time to retool, re-strategize, maybe look at some new offerings that they've been wanting to do and focusing their time there, but essentially they have pretty much gone into that hibernation, I think is a great word for it, just because of the lack of any business right now.
Yeah, so especially if you're concerned about cash flow, cash is king. You all heard that term. Bank loans I think are going to get tighter. They just are. And we're encouraging people to look at their cash reserve, and is that going to last them for the next 12 months? And if not, what do you need to do to either try to gain some more business if you can, but someone in the service industry may not even be able to do that. So do they need to hibernate? Or are there other expenses that they're going to need to cut? And friends, you know, I try to be optimistic as well, but I also want to be realistic. I think Aaron mentioned that. And I encourage you to really think that this is not going to be a quick fix. We all, I think, inherently know that, but we want to be hopeful. Also, the other thing I would recommend that all of you, you know, those that know us, working on your business time. And we're going to be setting out a workbook that I started to go through with you. And I encourage you, really look at your business in the 3 areas of the scalable growth model: what's working, what's not working. I also would encourage you to, even if you have team members, to have your team members do that with you. And come up with 3 to 5 initiatives in methodical growth, 3 in the intentional infrastructures, and 3 in leadership that you want to focus on right now. At the end of the day, it's going to be about the survival of leaders that are taking action, being agile, and moving forward. A lot of people have connected this to being in a war. Well, in war, you never know what the next battle is going to bring. And so you also need to then adjust how you're operating. So I encourage you to really think about taking the time every week and look at it, replan, go out the next 60 days, go out, look at your numbers, and think about also the opportunity to be creative right now and innovative in your business and rethink it. Maybe there's some things in your business you didn't like, and maybe there's time to re-engineer and redo those things as well. But at the end of the day, there's only 2 things that are going to improve cash flow. And that is going to be, you have to get more business in, do it effectively to make profit on it, and you're going to have to be able to manage your expenses as well. But part of that is you taking time to work on those things. Erin, did you have any closing comments or thoughts?
I would encourage, we're going to open up the Q&A, and so I encourage all of you, during, as I'm giving some final thoughts, to put questions in the Q&A. We really want to have an open dialogue. Also, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. I think, not to be the pessimist, but going back to cash flow and coming back to fight another day, business owners are inherently optimistic. That's what drives you to create a business. That's what drives you to think what's possible. And the hard thing about a situation like this is not letting that optimism blind you. And that's where I say, really take a hard look in worst case. And if this first phase of stabilization, if you haven't made some of those hard choices, I know that there are a lot of businesses that are holding on thinking, okay, we can just get through a few more weeks, and they're looking at maybe a month of cash flow left, but trying to hang on to the team and the expenses that they had. That may not be sustainable. So I would encourage you, this is the time to make those hard choices. I think all business owners have had to do it, and it's been difficult. But if you haven't already, I think that's the first step of going through and really analyzing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a question here. So our plan is to restaff at our current levels, mostly because we want our SBA loan to be forgiven. The bank is saying that means we have to get back to 90% of our old staff, but that's actually more than we now believe we will need. We will have a hard time keeping them busy. We feel stuck in our decision-making at this point.
Cindy, that's a great question. It is a question. Everyone's dealing with it. We're dealing with it. The way that loans were designed to, that it's really hard for many people to actually meet the forgiveness criteria. There's a couple ways to look at it. I would bring back folks to the point where you feel it makes sense for the business. Okay, that's first thing. The second component is you have to decide then if you don't bring them back all at the same level, you just get a discounted amount forgiven. Okay, it's not an all or nothing right now. I want to say right now because I'll talk about that in a second. But the thing to think about, it's low cost money as well. It's 1%. No interest or no payment for 6 months, and you have 18 months after that to pay it back, and that's specifically the PPP loan, right? Payroll Protection Program loan. Some businesses are deciding that they're okay with the risk of it not being forgiven because they need that cash to be able to survive longer. Other folks are trying to make sure they're hitting that at least 75% level. I do know right now, it's been going on for about 8 days. I just looked at some updates this morning. They're actively right now trying to change the guidelines for this program, but they're not out yet. And so I don't want to even say, hey, there's some new things going you may not need to pay attention to. I think it's a business decision. I think you have to decide, am I willing to say part of my loan won't be forgiven and then I'll have a 24-month note at 1%? or am I willing to just get people on? You know, I don't know if you've seen this, and one of the questions I just saw was, I've been trying to get my employees back, but they won't come back. And that's the other issue going on right now, is that we see employees not wanting to come back because they're making more in unemployment with the extra $600 a week. And that's a whole nother issue. So you may even try to bring everybody back to city, but you may have people who don't want to come back. And so I think from a business decision, I would encourage you to look at your cash flow. And if you can make it work to be forgiven, you know, they're adding rent into that now, or they're trying to, I should say. They said that was going to be outside of the 75%, but now I think they're trying to put it into the 75%. Is one of the things they're negotiating right now. So hopefully there'll be some new guidelines coming out before they come due. But I would just, it's low cost money at the end of the day at 1%. It was intended to bring people back, but if people can't, how can a restaurant bring back all their employees if there's no work? So trying to extend it out.
Yeah, I think it's in this case, I think you have to look beyond the 8 weeks. You know, it's an 8-week window for that PPP loan specifically. And what happens then? Do you feel like at that 8 weeks, there's a good chance you will need that level of staffing? Then that's probably a good move to try to keep that level of staffing, even though they may be a little slow, because you think at the end of 8 weeks you're going to need it. There's other businesses that look at that and say, there's no way. We won't be back in 8 weeks. Same thing with unemployment. Right now, that extra $600 a week is scheduled to end in July, so that may also shift employees wanting to come back. And it's a choice that every different, you know, businesses have to make. They're all a little different in different situations.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here. We're seeing real benefits to employees working from home. There's no commute, flexibility for family time, etc. There is a potential downside, though, in terms of in-person collaboration and idea sharing. Meetings online are going fine, but I like to have more ways to connect informally. Any ideas?
Andy, I get that question very well. You know, I think we're going to have to get creative. You know, one thing one of our folks we were working with, we had them actually pose a question to all their employees, and throughout the week they kept this living document, and then and it was about how to redefine some of their services for their clients based on what was going on. And so they created this online document that everyone was adding to and adding articles to, and then other people would pose a question on trying to solve that issue. So it became this online thing. And then at the end of the week, they kind of reviewed it as a group, and they voted on who they felt added the most unique idea to it, or the most creative idea. And so I think there are just some opportunities to look at being creative. And Erin, I don't know if you have some thoughts around this as well.
Yeah, you know, I can speak one as a parent with a grade schooler at home, which Michael is well aware of, that, you know, the flexibility and the working from home has been really vital. But I think, Andy, your employees are going to be craving the same thing I am, and you probably are, is moving back into slowly an interaction, and it may be staged. You know, what I anticipate is that we'll slowly move, and this is, you know, the next 6 weeks or so, to a face-to-face meeting, socially distanced, but being able to have that face-to-face. So you may look at a phased approach. If you talk to your employees, picking up the phone, having those phone conversations is also vital, and the Zoom conversations. But I think just continuing to take it week by week is your best strategy.
Thank you, Erin. Also, I don't know if all of you know who Sandra Dickerson is, but she owns a great company called Your People Professionals, and they're about HR services. And they also have a great blog on their website. And she just let us know, actually, in the chat, that SBA has now addressed rehires in their PPP program. So people who you want to bring back but don't want to. And it's called Question 40. They've been adding different questions and it looks like that's an offset against payroll when those employees refuse to return to work. And so that's an important part of the forgiveness analysis. So if you have employees now who you want to bring back and refuse to come back, then that is part of the forgiveness program. Thank you, Sandra, for adding that. And also, again, if you haven't been to Sandra's website at Your People Professionals, she has an amazing blog she's been doing. They updates on all these employee issues. So definitely check that resource out as well.
If you go to ypp.com, it's an easy website. It's got a lot of good resources.
You know, we just got someone saying, go to YPP, they're highly recommended. So someone just put that question in. So thank you, Brian, for doing that. You know, at the end of the day, folks, we have an opportunity, and it is going to be a challenging time for us moving forward, but it's also a time that really lets us be that leader you know you want to be and can be. It's not going to be easy, but I encourage you, go through the workbook, go with your team, what's working, what's not working, what are the permanent changes, what are the temporary changes. I think there's going to be some opportunities that you're going to may have employees that want to continue working at home. That might be some, again, semi-permanent change. So go through that to really understand what the challenges are that you need to do. Also, I would encourage you to really look at making sure that you have people around you, whether it's your employees, other CEOs, other business owners, be able to really look at and help you through this process. Everyone's going through it. The one thing that's different here is that everyone is going through the same thing that you're going through. So don't take it alone. Also, make sure we're going to send a follow-up with the workbook in there, and make sure you register for next week's webinar. We're going to now talk about stabilization. We're going to talk about recovery and what are the things you should be doing in the recovery phase. And so that will be next week's webinar, same time, same bat channel. For that.
I think this is what all business owners really appreciate, is like the proactive, like how can I start being proactive, because this first stage is so reactionary and unknown. So I know everybody's itching to get back into that strategizing and recovery.
Yeah, and then also, you know, think outside the box. I know someone just mentioned about the digital expansion and how do you be using the technology and the digital marketplace to rethink how you're going after things. So be strong, be transparent, but take your time, work on your business. Make sure you're spending a couple hours on this. Don't get overwhelmed. The strongest will be those that are acting agile every week and moving their business forward. And we're hoping you got some new ideas today, some things that help stabilize you moving forward. We'd always love to be a resource. If you know of anybody who needs some one-on-one coaching, help them with their strategy moving forward, or even those that are doing well, want to continue growing, that are essential, we'd love to be part of them and helping them continue to grow forward. So thank you, everybody.